week and a half after staging that accident to buy yourself time.
Oh, yeah.
3 broken ribs?
Yeah, 2, I think, confirmed, and, the lung. That was
and a lung puncture later.
Yeah. The week got tricky. I stopped thinking about this.
Yeah, we'll move on from that. That's bad juju.
Well, carry on.
April 1st. 1 year.
It's been a fucking ride, dude.
I bet it has. How would you summarize it?
I don't, a few words doesn't really do it. I mean,
Pick one word. If there's one word.
There's one word that sticks out in my head is, it's been a hell of an opportunity.
That's more than one, but I'll buy it.
Opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Opportunity. That's actually a great starting point because, a lot of what we're trying to do with, let's say, these podcasts, Made Up, Toddcast, Blame Todd, whatever. It's to get stories out for people. Yours is interesting, not just because of our personal connection, but that bigger piece where we had actually first talked about you coming to work for 906. Was that 21 or 22? A few years ago.
Yeah, it was, Project Adventurous. We were...
Sure.
So what exactly do you do?
Uh-huh. Right. So you had the opportunity. We sat down, we talked, you were interviewed. You passed at that time. And then it comes back around, 3 years later, here we are. This time you take the leap. And I don't know that, people who know you will know this, but people who don't know you won't know that you were coming from a single employer, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Of 30 years.
Yeah, touch over 30.
Yeah. And you and I are 50, 51.
Mm-hmm.
Not generally the time that you'd be making major life changes, right?
Yeah,
most people.
Right, yeah. I sensed kind of a build-up, COVID kind of... Well, there was changes going on in my life.
Sure.
My kids were leaving the nest. And I've always had a desire to be up in the UP. Been spending a lot of time up here over the years. And, back when we were talking in 2021, it just, for both of us, it wasn't time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was.
And then it was. Like the last year, is anything taking you by surprise? How's the transition been? You go from, I would think, having a really good handle on what you do, having systems, processes. Like I gotta believe your work life and your home life, you kind of had it sorted. You probably had a routine and a schedule.
Yeah, I had, I think by most of my acquaintances' accounts, I had flexibility in my life that allowed me to do things that a lot of people don't have. Mm-hmm. And, maybe by design, it was, efficiencies but my work at that, the last 5 years has really allowed me to step outside. And, quite honestly, I think I did better work on the bike
then
away from standing in front of a computer than I did a lot of times standing in front of a computer and, just being able to think through processes. But my life became riding a bicycle.
At that time.
Yeah.
That's an interesting shift because my experience has been, so at that time you're saying your life had become riding a bicycle, then you go to work for a nonprofit whose whole intention and purpose is to help empower people, and we're doing it through running and we're doing it through cycling. And there seems to be an inverse relationship once you start working for an organization that's trying to get others to do it, that your time on the bike goes down.
Yeah, it dropped off pretty significantly. And, that's something that I think about a lot, just how that's impacted me.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's a lot of overuse type things going on in my body that
Sure.
I was just, I don't feel like I ever really trained for that, for being on a bike. It was just part of my life.
Yeah.
And, through all the events and I don't know if you want to call it racing, I never really considered myself a racer.
Mm-hmm.
I was there showing up, towing the line, having some fun. Some days were more competitive than others, but I also sensed at the time that, leading up to this all unfolding this last year, that it was time to concentrate on something else.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about being AFI, and it was time for something different to be AFI.
AFI, for those who don't know, is all fucking in.
All fucking in.
Yes, all fucking in. Go back because I don't want to lose track of it. Any transition? What's it been like? How's it been? I mean, 1 year, 365 days.
Visiting the UP, and we visited a lot.
Yep.
And living here is a different thing. I lived in Winnebago County, Wisconsin, virtually my whole life. I knew where to go for everything. Something happened, I had a resource for it.
Yep.
It's not that way up here.
Well, you've got a resource, but you don't know where they are. Right?
Yeah. For the most part. I mean, there's obviously less. So you got to be a little bit more strategic about how you process changes in your day to day.
You bring up an interesting point there, because I know you and Billy spent a lot of time up here. We, in our conversations and our adventures together, that came up that you guys would like to live up here someday. That was very clear. But when you vacation somewhere frequently, I think it's common that you go there and you're like, I love this place. Boy, it'd be great to live here. The idea of living somewhere, I have to believe, is way different from actually moving there and living there. Has there been any surprises in that, or have you guys pretty much settled right in? And
we acted fairly quickly to get ourselves as settled as possible. I mean, we were here a week and made an offer on a house, and 5-6 weeks later we were moving in, and that helped kind of lay the groundwork for the rest of the year. I needed that. I needed a solid foundation in that.
Makes sense.
In having a home base and not feeling disjointed with, some of my belongings are on this side of the county and some of them are
Beaver Grove,
just all over the place. And so, yeah, the adjustment to living here in a place that I was formerly, vacationing or recreating, I didn't have any question that I wanted to live here. That was solid. We'd spent 10 years kind of traveling around the UP, and then we got the Grand Tour, and Marquette County it made the most sense.
Yeah. What, I guess what made this the opportunity or the thing that compelled you and Billy to make such a significant life change? And by, this, I'm talking about the opportunity to come up and work for the adventure team. Why now? Why this?
Well, I guess, going back to my introduction to the 906 Adventure Team, Polar Roll, I guess I heard of Margie ahead of time. Some folks from down the Fox Cities area were talking about the Margie first year, and I'm like, that looks like something I could get into. I didn't. Wasn't quite ready, just wasn't in that headspace. I learned about the polar roll. We come up, do the polar roll, just kind of had a look around. Didn't really know the community all that well.
Mm-hmm.
Knew a few people, but come back for the Margie the following year. Something grew in me. You know, the endurance side of me started to grow a little bit more.
Makes sense.
But I didn't really know much about the adventure team. Like I really had no idea what the events were supporting. And even through, you know, I started to gather more when we, you know, did the recon for the Crusher 225 back in May of 2020.
Yep.
And
that was the first time we'd ridden together.
It was, yeah. And, you know, I just started piecing it together. I didn't know how impactful the organization was. And then in 2021, we did the second iteration of Project Adventurous. And I took some cues from Kelsey. She seemed to be inspired to start a team in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
which
you know,
she followed through and did.
She did. And that really like sparked something in me.
Yeah.
Because she took away something from Project Adventurous that she was motivated to do something about it. And I think back to, I still didn't know really what it was at that point. I mean, I was still oblivious to what the programming actually was.
This would have been before.
This would have been 2021.
Yeah, and this would have been before we talked potentially about you coming on board.
Yeah.
A few months before.
Yeah, so we were vacationing. I guess it was the summer of 2021, and we just happened to be in Marquette on, I think it was a Thursday, maybe a Monday. In any case, I took the opportunity to come down to Tourist Park and kind of watch it unfold. That was kind of the selling point for me. Like it really all kind of came together. The shape of what was really going on became more apparent to me at that point.
Yeah.
And we started talking a little bit more. I sensed a need. I felt like I had some of those skill sets that you were talking about, that we had talked about. You became a little bit more aware of, you know, kind of what I was doing professionally. And, the time was now.
Mm-hmm. How would you contrast the two work environments from where you were to where you are now?
The corporate world is, you know, the resources that I had. I mean, there's a department for that. There was a department for that. There was, you know, there was a support system in that world. And sometimes, you know, that was for the detriment of actually executing and producing something. Here I'm, you know, while I gradually understand what resources are available, I'm making it happen a lot on my own. There's a lot of figuring shit out, and you know, I just think about some of the projects that we've executed in the last year, and
learning management system.
Yeah, I mean, that was a world that I came from, and you know, come the end of September into October, you're like, let's get this done before January 1st.
Right.
And
we talked about that. So the learning management system, we transitioned from the original iteration, which was Canvas. We started using it around 2020 or so. How long did it take us to convert to the new platform?
Well,
months?
Yeah, you know, I don't think we really started working with content files until the middle of November. I recall, I don't think I loaded a file to the system until the second week in December.
That's accurate. Because there were some issues.
Yeah, we created about 2.5 hours worth of learning management content in about 2 weeks.
We talked about that previously, and you had said, if you compared a rollout of a similar project corporately, that just the duration, the amount of time it took to roll it out was significantly less here, right?
Yeah. Now, granted, I was copying over and reformatting, and there wasn't really. We didn't add a whole lot of bells and whistles. We just got it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it was the process was expedited.
Yeah. I think I've got a lot of time that I spent in the corporate world, and I agree with you that there's a lot of resources at your disposal. There's a lot of departments which create layers. And I mean, I just thinking back to my time corporately, the whole ethos of the corporate world is, efficiency, time is money, blah, blah, blah. But it is actually interesting how all of those layers and processes and people can actually bog the whole thing down. Yeah. And it can turn something into, what should be a project that could take a month into something that is in excess of a year. And that, honestly, at least from the environment I came from, that is not an exaggeration.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of validation that the process is largely validating information, in a corporate world, and checking all those boxes to avoid liabilities, and a lot of that validation was done already, and so.
Would you say that the self-supported ethos that we promote for the events is alive and well within 906 Adventure Team for staff as well?
Yeah, I would say so.
That whole narrative of you are on your own, no one's coming to save you, blah, blah, blah. It puts you in a position where you have to make things happen because nobody's coming in to do it for you.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say that we're not working together as a team. We are, but each of us carries, I think, if you don't know how to do it, you need to figure out how to do it.
Oh, for certain. For certain. I knew that to be true. I came back up and visited you shortly after, hey, we need to put somebody in a position here. And I knew in short order what I was stepping into.
Meaning what?
Just you versus you. And, it was largely going to be self-supported.
How was that transition for you, going from that 30-year, career, all the resources, and kind of knowing where everything's at, who everybody is? Just you have a clear lay of the land, clear idea what your map is, and you come up here, and you're literally like, it's like playing a video game. And as you venture into different sections of the map, then it illuminates more of the map, right? Far fewer resources. Like, we are the resource.
Yeah.
Our volunteers that support us are the resource. It's just people who are dedicated to the mission are the resource. And you're kind of making it up as you go every day.
Yeah. Well, it's been, literally every day has been, what am I going to, what's the opportunity going to be?
As you, did he tell you, Elizabeth, that he is paid a little more attention to Facebook to see what I'm posting in the morning, just so he understands what he's walking into that day?
Yeah, it's become part of my, it might be 2 minutes. It might be the top 2 or 5, 10 posts, but if I want to know what I'm walking into, jump on Facebook, couple of scrolls, I can usually figure out.
Take a note there. Highlights. So a year, your first year. What are your highlights? What do you look back on? You know, what do you think of? Somebody says, what's your highlight from the year?
Two things. Just being recognized by a kid in the program. That was came out of nowhere. We were a couple of weeks into programming, and I had to make a trip over to Menards and pick up some supplies. And I'm walking down to get to my truck with a cart full of stuff, and I see this kid flanking me from the next aisle over, and he comes, and as I getting to my truck to open up the back of it, this kid looks over at me, and he says, "Hey, Coach Marc, I'm Ivan, group number so-and-so, we'll see you tonight." And I'm like, that stuck out. Yeah.
I've been doing it for 11 years, and that never gets old. It's really wild in my mind, because you look at the world we're living in right now, and so many people put so much time and energy into becoming an influencer or whatever they are trying to become, and put out this persona and be followed and liked by all these people across the world. And then you have that experience in a parking lot where a 6-year-old young man recognizes you, and in that exchange, there's just something that, for me at least, every time it happens, it kind of qualifies how superficial and fake everything else is. And it just, for me, now, I'm not saying anybody who's an influencer out there isn't doing great stuff, but to see that impact that relationship has with the kids, and that they're excited to see you and to be known by you, it's huge.
Yeah. It was.
There's nothing better.
Yeah.
And you said when you came down to Bike Club, whatever year that was kind of where it was like, oh yeah, that's where it clicks. I think that's the key. Like, we can go out and talk about the program and try to paint the picture with words, but until you're standing with your 2 feet in the grass and you're 25 yards away from it, feeling it, hearing it, seeing it, you can't understand it. You can't.
Yeah, I would agree.
You just can't, because you sit in that, even like last year, considering the wild year that it was and the circumstances that we were working through as a community, when I would stand in that field and you kind of do the 360, just kind of scanning the perimeter, looking at all the groups of kids and seeing the volunteers that are there. I mean, in Marquette, we've got essentially 130 people that dedicate, time 1 day or 2 days a week to the program all summer, about 90 days. It's kind of humbling to see what you're part of.
Right.
And what a small piece you are of the bigger picture. And that's just when you're standing in Marquette. That's not even to mention the other 14 communities.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. So if I've prepared myself for sitting down and having this conversation with you, the one thing that's been running over and over in my head is the word opportunity. And there's a video soundbite in relation to when somebody asks you if you thought that they'd be able to finish an event, a route, whatever, and you've basically said, I'm not here to decide whether or not I think you can do it or not. I'm here to provide a space, an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I think about it, and I bring definition to why I'm here, it's really just to tell people that you got to take that step forward and take the opportunity.
Take the chance.
Yeah, it's made all the difference in my life. It's given me purpose that I'd been missing for a long time.
That to me is the big differentiation between what we do and what we would do if we were a for-profit business. You know, you came out of corporate, I came out of corporate. And to me, in the corporate world, opportunity is taken. That's what they want. Because within that opportunity is, some advancement on the cash flow or some new business opportunity, et cetera. What we do is provide an opportunity, a chance. Just put it out there for people. Don't predetermine what winning and losing looks like. I think that's really important. What's baked in our ethos and culture is that, you're wearing it. You versus you. You versus the opportunity. You versus, taking the shot, taking the chance. Just give people the opportunity and then hang it out there and let them take it or not take it. You're giving. Instead of taking, it's always giving. That's the big shift, really, when I came out of corporate, because it just seemed like we're always taking. Get into a position where you're giving. And honestly, I've never felt like at any point prior in my life that I've had more by giving.
Sure.
By giving to people, not by taking.
Yeah.
100%. Other highlights. Anything else? I think you said there's 2. Ivan was number 1.
Yeah. When I realized that this was unfolding, like I was all fucking in. I was packing up my house and I was preparing to move here. I started to go into this like dream sequence. Like every day, every night, go to bed. And I was having vivid dreams about what my commute to work would be like. I didn't know where I was going to live. I was going to be on the West End. I was going to be where in the grade I was going to be, and just imagining to myself what my commute would be like. I mean, commuting has always been kind of the foundation of building consistency for me in the last 30 years of biking. But the day that I did it and made my first commute into work, and that emotion was pretty wild. I think that day, if I remember right, I'd gotten into work. I was bawling all the way down the grade, basically. I got into work, and you had sent me the unforgettable file. And I thought, I'm just going to let that play out a little bit. Watched a little bit of it. Waterworks again. I'm sitting here in the back room when this was the boardroom, and
I remember coming in that day.
And you went back out into the common space out in our office here, and I just needed a fucking hug. And I hear the door open, and in walks Paul. And here I am hugging you in the middle of the space. And that was another moment for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we at on time?
29 minutes.
Okay. Oh, we're a little over. We're gonna keep going a little bit. No, I'm good. It's just that cough.
Well, it's right here if you need it.
Trying to get over it. Surprises, things you didn't expect.
I kind of figured I'd find a place to get my hair cut by now. That hasn't happened.
Well, you took care of the shaving.
Yeah, well.
That's Texture Salon. Tammy. Got to talk to Tammy. Giving Tammy a plug here.
Yeah, I got a...
I'm going to text her
All right.
after this. We're going to send her this clip too. We got to clip this out and send it to Tammy.
What can you do with this?
This
Tammy?
guy needs a hair.
I kind of want to cut it.
Off the clock. No other surprises? Has it been what you expected? Or did you even know what to expect?
I didn't really come into it with any expectations. Outside of, I knew that, I told my kids when I sat them down and told them that we were selling the house and moving up here. And I said, this first year, I'm just going to give it everything I got.
Which you've done.
I expected it to be hard. But I've let some things in my life kind of sit by the wayside. I haven't been nearly as active. But I don't feel like it's regrettable. I feel like
active, do you mean physically? Riding?
Yeah, riding. Yeah. I made some changes, and I've had a couple of strange hiccups along the way. But I'm of the mindset that I just got to lean into it a little bit, trust the process.
Mm-hmm. Why'd you come into it with no expectations?
It was really built on, I had a confidence in the mission of the organization. I trusted you. I trust you. And I guess I had a confidence in myself that I could pull through and get done what needed to be done.
It's an interesting comment in a positive way to me, because I think that I think too often people go into things with specific expectations. And then when things don't meet their expectations, there's regret, there's unhappiness, there's a sense of, like, to me, and knowing you, it doesn't surprise me, but there's sort of a sense or a feeling of humility in a person's ability to leave what they've done, uproot their life, and then come into an entirely new opportunity, as you put it, with no expectations. And I think it's super rare too, or more rare than it is common these days. So I applaud you for coming into it with no expectations.
Yeah, I knew I was changing my life. I knew it was going to be, at the end of a year or 5 years, it was going to look significantly different. And I don't need anything outside of knowing that I'm doing the right thing.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been motivated by money, except, when I was raising my kids, I had to.
Well, you want to provide.
Had to provide, and
sure.
But I never really needed much.
Mm-hmm. I actually think, here's what I would offer to people, spinning off of your comments about coming into this with no expectations. I think that when you come into things with specific expectations, first of all, those expectations are more often than not driven by some sense of ego, or something you feel like you're owed for some sort of status that you carry, especially in the professional world, right? Because if I go to apply to become a director of communications, there's a certain hierarchy of experience and income and benefits that are attached to that. You have a specific expectation of what you're going to do and what you're going to get for doing it. You come into this world with no expectations. And by doing that, I feel like you open up your possibilities. So the inverse is true, I think, too often, where, okay, maybe you'll go into something with expectations that are sort of corporately defined. You know what you're going to get there. But there's also an entire world of opportunity that's unavailable to you now because you're caught between these two rails. So where I'm going with that is I think that if you could get more people aligned with this idea, and also what you did, Elizabeth, I mean, you took a chance in jumping over. So, I mean, all three of us have taken a chance at some point in the trajectory or the timeline of 906 Adventure Team. But if you go into it with literally no expectation and just a complete fucking commitment to making it a success and giving opportunity to people, how can you fail? And how can you ever not get something that benefits you? I mean, there's just, you open up your world to a lot more things by kind of laying down your expectations to the side. If that makes any sense.
For sure.
But that can be hard because there's a lot of unknowns in that.
Yeah, I think I've opened myself up to the possibility of failure a little bit more. And
Meaning what?
well, I've taken a chance at just on my day to day. I've always been kind of exacting and deliberate in executing and developing a strategy to do things, and I think
Methodical.
bit
is the word I've used.
Yeah. I feel like I've loosened those edges a little bit.
I think so.
And that's been helpful for me to get through this year.
The pace has been a little bit of an adjustment. Do you think, like the tempo of decision making, the tempo of, because you and I have had this conversation, like you don't always have 3 weeks to sit back and brainstorm on a whiteboard what we're going to do.
Right.
Whereas, maybe in a corporate setting, there's a lot more of that goes on where you're just in meetings. Talking about doing stuff, not getting anything done.
Yeah. I mean, there's some guidelines, but the one thing that we talked about very early on was, just when you have a question, think about the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Mission first.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that as my guide.
Mm-hmm.
Am I empowering people to be the best version of themselves?
Right.
Is this going to get us to where we need to be?
Mm-hmm. Is it in alignment with what we want to do?
Right.
Opportunities we want to provide?
Yeah. I've made some regrettable decisions at times, but I've learned from them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, organizationally, I think that we make it a habit of encouraging failure. I think failure is a good thing. I think, especially in our environment, to be able to be given some of the autonomy to just make a call. It doesn't have to be the right call. And if it turns out to not be the right call, make another call, and try to edge back toward getting back on track.
Yeah.
I think that too many people get analysis paralysis, wondering, is this the right decision? Well, you could decide in a certain moment that this is the decision. And in that moment, you might have been right if you had actually acted on it. But because you took 2 weeks to act, right?
Yeah.
Now time has moved on. Circumstances have changed. The environment you're making the decision in that you had decided was the right decision is 2 weeks further down the line. And people don't get it. Like, the only thing that may have changed in that equation is you let too much time pass. You didn't seize the opportunity. Strike while the iron's hot.
Right.
There's a lot of that hesitation. I feel like I've seen from you, I think that you've fallen into that, or you've gotten into that groove. Yeah, I think you've worked into it. Kind of got the tempo. Because there is a tempo to the decision making, and it's basically keep fucking moving.
Yeah. Yeah. And having a year under my belt, it really does take a year to work through just the operations of the organization and
100%.
understand.
And we're still changing and evolving. I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be ongoing.
Yeah.
That will never change. If, before I forget to ask you this question, if you're going to give Elizabeth a piece of advice for her first year, what would your piece of advice be for Elizabeth?
I don't know.
You are on the spot, brother.
Come on.
And now she's just, do you have a pencil and paper?
Oh,
Oh, it's going to
I'm
be
ready.
recorded.
Yeah, you got to work on your look with him. Like, yeah. I don't know. I think we've established that when Todd's gone off the rails, and he does, you got to establish a look. Just, all right, let's start over. First things fucking last kind of a look. Yeah.
All right.
Establish the look.
What look are we talking about?
Well,
Can I see your look, Mark?
it's present, but it's I don't know. There's moments that I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know that I know what look you're talking about.
Well,
You'll
I'll
have to
let
call it out next time.
I will. This is the look. I don't really have any advice for Elizabeth at this point because she's knocking it out of the park, I think.
That's fair. That's fair. If you had a question for him, what would the question be?
Well, this morning it was how do you change the water jug? But guess what? I learned how to do that. So I'm feeling pretty good right now.
You need to write a policy and procedure for that.
No, I don't.
I'm trying to think if there's anything. I don't have anything off the top of my head.
What time do you have to take your dog?
Guess what?
What?
My husband's going to take the dog.
Oh, there you
we
go.
are all in.
Kyle
take
for
your
the save.
time.
Kyle for the save. Great. What else?
It's crazy. It's been a year. It was the fastest year of my life. No question. It seems like yesterday.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I didn't space and time. I didn't see a year passing by that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We've been busy.
Mm-hmm. How's it feel right now, this year in April? Like, do you feel settled? Like you got a good handle on where we're at, what comes next?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good sense of where we're headed, and I want to open myself up to just the next opportunity and try to be more involved with just building some relationships. And now I kind of know who a lot of the faces are and kind of understand what motivates a few people to be part of the community. And I feel more a part of the community.
How would you describe the interplay between the youth program, the adventure teams, and the trilogy events? So the adult programming.
Like, how do they parallel each other?
Yeah. How does it all go together? Because that is the piece. I think when you came in through the event portal, and you weren't necessarily aware of what we were doing on the youth side. And there's definitely people who come in as parents of children through the youth program who have no idea that there's this other part of the environment.
Yeah, I guess before I comment on that, I'm more interested in the relationship of a volunteer coach, someone who hasn't been a part of the organization and is looking to maybe jump into coaching. And I'm real interested in the the entry point for some people, having really no experience whatsoever, maybe on a bike or working with kids, or there's a fair amount of people, like you've pointed out, community starts a adventure team and the bike community rallies around it.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally you're going to get a lot of volunteer coaches that have had experience on a bike, but eventually that starts to change a little bit. You start to see other types of people who don't necessarily have that background getting involved in I've been more of an observer of that situation, because I think that what the parallel is that they're both going on a unique journey. The kids are
For sure.
building some character through Adventure Bike Club.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these coaches, unknowing of how it's going to impact them, they're going on a journey as well. And
Many coaches have said that.
yeah, as it relates to the events, the events are largely there to support the adventure team. I'm really not sure how to answer how they parallel each other. I'd like to think that all the adventure bike kids, I see them, I see the kids that go through the program someday being Crusher EXers,
Well, some of them already are.
Yeah. I think that's like the ultimate event within the trilogy.
The Crusher?
The Crusher EX specifically.
It's the ultimate why. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's
most inclusive?
I think it's the most you versus you. The skill sets and the level of preparedness that goes into putting yourself out in that environment it's a bigger barrier than the other events. There's a lot more control around the other events. But the EX, that's it. It's getting you out into a space and really putting you in a position to understand the self-supported ethos.
Yeah, Crusher EX is the epitome of that ethos. So if I'll expand on that a little bit, because just in case somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, what the hell is Crusher? What does EX mean? So EX was a byproduct of COVID, because in 2020, you couldn't hold events anymore. And, we have had a self-supported ethos built into the events from day one. But over time, what happened is people heard about our events, support crews, family, friends, and they're like, oh my God, my husband has signed up to do this event, and the race organizer says they're not going to help him. There's no aid stations. We got to go help him. So neutral support in the community that shows up to support the people doing the events has become a huge part of the events. Like they wouldn't even be the same without the neutral support and that sense of community that's out there. But that's for mass start events. That's for Margie, that's for Polar Roll. Well, Crusher too. But again, going back to COVID 2020, that was not allowed. So that's when I came out, in a video in April and said, all right, this is the real deal. We're going live on this. We've been training for this for the last few years, self-supported. This year you are legitimately on your own. We're going to throw a beacon on you, satellite tracker from track leaders, just so we know where to come get the body if you don't make it, because nobody's out there to save you. And you're right. I think that the EX Crusher is sort of like the crown jewel of our self-supported ethos. It embodies everything that is all about, because you're essentially given a route that you have to run on your phone or a Garmin or a Wahoo or whatever device you're going to choose. And you have to have, specific what we call recommended gear, but really it's required gear. And you have to be really ready to go out and navigate 40, 100, or 225 miles completely alone.
Get yourself in and out.
Yeah. And it is, it's interesting to look at Margie with the Margie Gassick 100 and the belt buckle and how rare it is that it gets handed out. And the number of people that show up to do that event, even though they're probably showing up because it's billed as the hardest single day mountain bike event in the country from Jeremiah, from his famous Facebook Live video. And it's sort of become like that buckle and that Margie 100 has become like your gold standard of what's hard. Meanwhile, we've got the Crusher EX225. We put that buckle into play a couple of years ago. I can't remember what the number is last year, but I think we had well over 30 people signed up to do it. And what, 4 qualify? Most, if you didn't get a buckle, it was almost like most people who didn't get a buckle quit. They got crushed. Mm-hmm. That EX225, that buckle, anybody that's walking around wearing that buckle, and there aren't many. There's way fewer of those buckles than there are of Margie buckles. Those people have seen some things. And I'm not saying that it's harder. I want to be clear. Like, I'm not comparing the two, but that experience, you start at, let's say, what did we start at? 7 o'clock in the morning one year. Mm-hmm. We didn't finish till 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day.
Right.
It was like 33-ish hours, I think, or something, maybe 32. Nonetheless, a long freaking time. Day, night, day, afternoon. Like that, to me, that does something to you when you experience that. If you do it enough, you don't come back the same person.
Yeah, you pile days on end. It changes you.
Yeah. There's nothing better on the second morning if it's a clear sky than when that sun comes up. Just that feeling, because also, to be clear for anybody who is unfamiliar with the EX Crusher, the 225, the majority of people are not sleeping. Like, you're not camping.
Right.
You have all you can do to get from start to finish under the buckle time with no sleep. I mean, weren't you hallucinating at one point when we were out last time doing it together? Yeah. I'm sure that you were.
Yeah, shadows do funny things. Yeah.
I want to go back real quick before this gets lost, and I know that we actually have some work to do today. Not that this isn't work, but I want to go back to the events and the adventure team thing, because I want to talk through kind of what I was talking about. And I think that my perspective on this is different just simply by the amount of time that I've spent doing it. Mm-hmm. So what I see today as we develop these youth adventure teams in different communities, right now we're confined to the Midwest. A lot of the people who are showing up to start the teams or to come in and coach on the teams have learned about the team through our events.
Sure. Okay.
And they go through a series of experiences personally. And they have these life-changing experiences. And I don't want to make it, be cliche, but I mean, that's what we've heard resounding in the survey results is this stuff changes you. Mm-hmm. If you commit yourself to doing it, it's going to change you. There's no two ways about it. And then they come out of it wanting to share that with kids in their communities, because a lot of them think, what if I had had this when I was a kid? So the other playoff of that that I have seen evolve over time is, I think the thing that is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness as humans is our sense of community. And what I mean by that is, most people establish their sense of community based on geographic location. My tribe lives here. This is my tribe is 49855, Marquette, Michigan. Or 49849. I think that's Ishpeming. We become very tribal based on our location, right? We do. We've seen this at times, not frequently, but frequently enough for it to be significant where we bring a team into a community and certain people within the community respond to that negatively. Like we bring in a youth team or a program to work with kids, and it's received poorly because why?
It threatens.
It for some reason it's threatening something within that coding of community, right? We've worked through all of that stuff. Now it's only happened a couple times, but each time it happens is hugely disappointing to me. The positive, though, is that our organization has gone out to develop youth teams throughout the Midwest. And basically what we're saying is we don't need to be aligned by a geographic location. We don't need to be defined by a zip code. We don't need to be defined by a state or a mascot. We should be defined by a mission and values. And then as a connection to that, this is where the events come in. This community that exists in the Midwest and beyond it will come in and support us within the community that they live in. So it's like these values and the mission of what we're doing is superseding that tribal community identity that's all too often geographically pinned down. And I think that that's important to at least talk about and put out there, because even within our own community, within the same zip code, you can see that even within the same zip code, then you get sub-tribes that don't all get along, right?
Sure.
There's something to be said for finding a way to strip that stuff away. And instead of, fighting over success as some finite thing, realizing that the only finite aspect of success is our ability to create more for people. And that goes back to this idea of, instead of taking opportunity, giving it.
Yeah. Well, I guess the parallel is that the events provide an opportunity for people to get together and share an experience in something that's
a hard experience.
Yep. All levels of hard.
Yep.
You check your ego at the door. You've either prepared or you haven't prepared. But when kids see adults doing that, I think it validates a path forward.
Well, think about during Project of Interest in 21. So our wives chased us around in 2020. Mm-hmm. In 21, Kelsey's kids were present. Mm-hmm. Noah was there. I mean, not all the time, but off and on. Mm-hmm. My kids were there. Stacy was there. Billy was there. I remember talking to Aaron Peterson at one point, sometime during that 17 days, kind of about this conversation about how cool it is for these kids to have this opportunity to see and experience what we were doing, but through their eyes, mm-hmm. right? Like, I remember, I can't remember what lake it was at. It was after Curtis. Anyway, you know where I'm talking about?
Yeah, over in the sandbox.
Yeah, it was after the sandbox. It was that park. I think it was a National Forest Park. The kids were all down at the lake. They were fishing. So I guess where I'm going with this is, I was basically telling Aaron, like, it's not that the kids really fully realize what the hell we're doing, right? They hear their dad or their mom are riding around the UP. They don't know what that means. They don't have a grasp of it. But being impacted by the experience, I had confidence that they may not benefit from the pollination of those experiences until much further down the line mm-hmm. in life. But having been around it is leaving little ripples of influence around them, and they don't even understand it's happening.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're right, it's huge. So when you get to Margie and you see the support crews, which that's probably the epitome of support crew at Margie, and all these families and these kids, that is, I don't know. I think that the good in that is immeasurable. Even at Crusher. I like what I like about Crusher is Crusher, to me, for whatever reason, seems to be, I think there's, whether this is true or not, I think there's a perceived lower barrier of entry to trying Crusher than Margie, because Margie is so demanding on your technical riding ability.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Or at least perceived to be. But I mean, it's definitely far more technical than Crusher.
Yeah. You can pace it out. You don't get wrapped up in having somebody behind you. And,
right.
Just pushing you along.
Yeah.
On a Crusher like you do Margie.
Yeah. Less technical. Your trail is not a single track. It's, a 2-track or snowmobile trail. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Yeah. Anything else before we get running?
I got nothing.
Anything else before we get running?
I forgot to hit record. April Fools.
That would be amazing.
I got nothing.
All right. Over and out.